Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Swati Chakraborty, platform moderator for the Platform for Dialogue. And today it's our immense pleasure that for today's webinar series in the month of August, we have Dr. Vedabhyas Kundu from New Delhi. She is a wonderful research scholar in the field of Gandhian studies and peace movement, and of course, non-violent activism. So, Dr. Vedabhyas Kundu is a program officer of Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti. Gandhi Smriti is a national memorial of Mahatma Gandhi, and he has already been conducted so many trainings and workshops on non-violent communication, non-violent conflict resolution, volunteerism, media, and information literacy. He has also extensively written on these issues. He has a large number of writings in several journals and books. And today we are really honored, sir, that you have with your busy schedule. And I know you are also doing similar webinar with so many experts from different parts of the world. So with your busy schedule, you can able to manage a time for us. And you will be going to talk on the nonviolent activism and how in this pandemic we can able to see that how nonviolent is a wonderful tool to communicate with each other without any kind of prejudice and with so many conflict in our inner mind, how we can do it. So I welcome you, sir, for today's webinar series. And now the floor is open to you. I request all of you, the participants over here, to please be ready with your questions. And after finishing Sir talk, you can ask directly to him, or else you can write in the chat box.
Thank you, madam. It is a real privilege to be able to talk to web platform for dialogue. I should thank you for inviting me to have an interaction and discussion with you all. And as we discussed, today's talk is going to be focusing on how we use various tools of nonviolent communication in this time of the pandemic, because all of us are really stressed out. And earlier in the previous months, most of us, all of us were in a phase of lockdown, and now things are opening up, but the number of cases are going up in a big way. And also, in fact, in my own family now, you see, my father has tested COVID positive, and he's in the other room, and he's under medication. So we are all stressed up. So how it is quite natural, possibly, that we become, because of the stress factor, we become very angry, we become aggressive, we try to, if someone in our family or friends try to put up some point, it is possible that we might react, and react quite aggressively. It is possible. And there are so many stress factors that are there. So in this situation, how we remain calm, what should be the way we communicate, because the communication is the key here. Because for everything, the central pillar is communication. So I would like to focus on how we are going to remain less stressful, how we try to remain calm despite a lot of pressures from all around, and use the strategies of nonviolent communication. In fact, when I start, I would like to recollect one of the first webinars that I was doing, that was with the National Law University in Jabalpur. So one of the students, it was the time of the lockdown, strict lockdown across the country, and one of the students asked me that how do we handle a situation, like he was talking about his family, his father, mother, and three brothers and sisters. So in all, 5 members. And he said that we are living not in a very big house, and over a period of time, because everyone in the family would go out, come back in the evening, have talks, and also everyone had their personal space. One of the biggest challenge that he said was that there was, in some way or the other, the personal space was becoming limited, because everyone are there in within the 4 compounds of the world, and they would have to sit, eat, and converse all the time. They are not able to go out. They are not able to do any activities. So in that context, how we can use the situation, it is quite natural that like if I'm trying to study, there will be some interference. If I'm trying to do certain things, then there will be certain issues. Then we started discussing how we use tools of nonviolent communication to handle such a situation. Well, friends, when I start with what is nonviolent communication, because that's the key. You see, we all try to have healthy food, and healthy food, when we take healthy food, it is very nourishing. Similarly, we all want to, breathe in the pure air. We in Delhi always complain that, especially during the winters, we have a situation where there is so much of pollution, and we feel so frustrated. There is headache, and there are so many health issues. So the air that we breathe in, the food that we take, it is so important that we take healthy food and we breathe the healthy air. And if we don't do, if we end up taking unhealthy food, we will get unwell. And when we are taking, inhaling the impure air with the air pollution around us, we become sick. Similarly, communication is as important as what we eat or we inhale, because that is, we cannot not communicate. That's what we students of communication learn when we go to the colleges. So in that situation, if we are indulging in unhealthy communication, then you will realize that possibly sometime you had a fight with your friend or a family members, and you had been very aggressive, or the other person had been very aggressive. So you will automatically become very, very tensed. You will become very, a lot of stress factor will be there. There will be a lot of tension. But if we are communicating what I call as healthy communication, it is nourishing. Because when we are using healthy communication, then what happens is that we are able to handle. You see, we are all human beings. We can't say that there cannot be any conflict in our lives. But how we handle the conflict is something, a big challenge for each one of us. So in that context, when we use healthy communication, it is also a nourishment. We will be much happier, and it will contribute to our well-being. Here, in this context, let us try to understand now what exactly is nonviolent communication, and then we will quickly go to some of the elements of nonviolent communication which are extremely important to handle stress, which are extremely important to handle issues, especially during this stressful situation of COVID-19 that we are passing through. Well, non-violent communication. In fact, Gandhi, Smriti, and Darshan Samiti is running a free online course on non-violent communication, and you will go. You can easily go to our website gandhismriti.gov.in, and you can find that on module. Just very simple. Everyone can do that course, which is of no difficulty at all. And in fact, we have more than 4,500 people who have already done this course in the last 3-4 months, not just within the country, but also abroad. Let me tell you what we can say a definition of nonviolent communication, and before we go to the elements and link it with the important aspects of how we handle stress using nonviolent communication. We use the definition of a very senior Gandhian. You see, Mahatma Gandhi was one of the greatest proponent of nonviolent communication. And nonviolent communication has its roots in the deep Indian culture. It all say, we can say it emanates from the Buddhist approach to the rightful speech, those 8 principles, rightful principles, so rightful speech. So, but in the modern times, one of the greatest proponent of nonviolent communication has been Mahatma Gandhi and his followers like Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and Desmond Tutu, and others. So, here we have a definition which we use when we do the training. We have been training not just through the online platform during this COVID-19, but even before that, I've been training the police people. I've trained CRPF. We have, in fact, training judicial officers, lawyers, prosecutors, everyone on the dimensions of nonviolent communication and how they can use it in their daily practice, not just professionally, but also within their families. So the definition, according to the very senior Gandhian Nakpat Thakkar ji, he passed away in 2018. He says non-violent communication means non-violence in our communication approach in its entirety, whether it is our verbal action, whether it is our non-verbal action, or even our thought processes and perspectives. He says that it is not just our verbal and non-verbal communication that needs to be non-violent in nature, but also our thoughts and perspectives. Say, for instance, I'm talking to you. I may be very, very good. I might be using a non-violent communication, but in the back of my mind, I have ill feelings towards you. So that's not nonviolent communication. So our thoughts, perspectives, and ideas also constitute the entire communication ecosystem in which we need to be nonviolent in nature, and it should permeate not just communication within ourselves, but also our family members and the society at large. So this is, in short, understanding of what exactly is nonviolent communication. So now, in the context of the elements of nonviolent communication, let us see what are the different elements and then try to understand it in the context of the situation that we are in. The first and foremost element of nonviolent communication that is that we should be nonviolent, not just, as I said, in our verbal and non-verbal communication, but also in our thoughts, ideas, and perspectives. Extremely important statement, especially in this situation when we are all under stress. We will tend to be aggressive. I remember one of the workshop that we were doing, one of the person said that, you see, we are in such a situation, that was during the lockdown period, such a situation where my wife asked certain things from me, and because I was already very tensed, so I shot back at her. Then we started discussing, and when we started discussing, he realized that it was not exactly the fault of his wife. It was because of the stress factor that accumulated, that resulted in how he shot back to his wife. So how we remain calm and how we do not, go away from that important point of using non-violence in our verbal and non-verbal communication, also our thoughts, ideas, and perspectives. That is the first and foremost important. The second most important element of non-violent communication, and which actually is extremely important and critical for ensuring that our dialogue, our communication with others is actually not violent, is our inner dialogue, is our self-talk. What is important is that we are always in the process of having an inner dialogue. We are talking, self-talking. But when we are very, very upset, when our self-talk becomes destructive, when our inner dialogue becomes destructive, when we are very tense, then what happens is that you will all realize that what happens is that we will try to shoot back to the others. Even if someone says something positive, and if it doesn't suit us, it is likely that we might be very aggressive. It is likely that we might differ with them in not a very non-violent way. So what is critical in non-violent communication is that to ensure that our communication ecosystem within ourselves remains non-violent in nature. And that's the biggest challenge, because, like, probably you will realize that what happens is that our self-talk, inner dialogues, lot of things. In fact, the other day I had a very interesting session with on this aspect, focusing only on this aspect with students of the Ateneo de Davao University of Philippines, and we were talking of nonviolent communication and the self, because when the self is in turmoil, when the self has a lot of problems and we are tensed within, then the problem starts, and our outer dialogue becomes problematic. And especially during this time, we will all find that we are all, quite, because each one of us have a different challenges to face. There is so much of challenges, like a student, someone who is working, probably his or her, she might have lost his or her job. It is possible that someone might have faced some problem in the office. There could be so many different situations, and because of which our inner dialogue or our self-talk becomes very aggressive in nature. So how we nurture that even in this situation, our self-talk remains calm, because we will not gain anything much when we are aggressive in nature. When our self-talk becomes aggressive, we have to be very focused on how to ensure that our self-talk and inner dialogue under the self remains calm, so that our outer dialogue remains, constructive in nature. Here, what I would like to, mark that nonviolent communication entails the way we to conversing with the others. Say, for instance, we have been used to talking to, or talking with a particular person in a particular way. But when we start, inculcating nonviolent communication, when we start using nonviolent communication as a strategy, then we will find that the way we talk, we have been able to reframe from the way we talk and talking in a different way, which will help us in developing better connections with the other person, empathetic connections with the other person. Because at the end of the day, our goal is to ensure what? Our goal is to ensure a strengthening of relationship. And that is how we can do it. The third most important aspect of nonviolent communication is how we can remain, avoid aggressiveness, and enhance or expand our emotional vocabulary. Because you see, when we are talking of expansion of the emotional vocabulary, that is linked to the issues of at the feelings level, what happens is that when our emotional vocabulary is very, very limited, then we tend to become very selective in what we are trying to say. We are not able to express our feelings. But when our emotional vocabulary, and also linking it with the emotional sharing, it is expanding, then it becomes an important aspect of empathy. Because I will tell you, empathy is an important aspect of nonviolent communication. It will, drive the individuals to care about each other. Because when our emotional sharing, emotional vocabulary are limited, we will not be able to understand the issues of the other. So, but when we are be able to expand it, we will be able to, care about the others. We'll have feelings of caring for the others, and thereby create social bonds. Extremely important in these situations, because when we are talking of this situation, what is most important is the importance of promoting solidarity amongst each other. I remember, you see, when we are all got into this whole realization that the world is, swept by this pandemic in the initial stages, then we find, especially as a student of communication, I found that, like, especially in the social media, there are so many friends. Say, for instance, in the Facebook, we would just be limited to, putting in likes or some comments, stray comments here and there. But when we started realizing about this pandemic, there seemed to be a interesting feeling of solidarity amongst a whole lot of people. And I realized that the people with whom I had never hardly ever had talked, they also were writing to me regarding how one was. I remember this girl from Madagascar writing to me, I would pray for all of you, all your family members, that all of you should remain safe and sound. That's the feeling of solidarity. And that comes when we are able to create social bonds. And that is an important aspect and a result of not using of nonviolent communication. The next important aspect is, avoiding moralistic judgments. You see, most of the time we end up being, judgmental about different issues. So how we need to avoid moralistic judgment, like, for instance, when we take a session with students with teachers. I say that I give that example. Like say a teacher is a football coach, and he or she, there is a student, a player who is not able to score goal. Most of the time, what we will do, we will say, "Hey, you are not able to score goal. You are totally useless. You need to be thrown out of the team. This, blah blah blah," and that demotivates the other person. But here, if we say, "Hello, I'm sure you are able to do good job, and I'm sure you will be able to score a goal in the next match, but you need to improve on the whole way you have been approaching the game." So I'm sure it helps that person to remain motivated. So avoiding moralistic judgments and avoiding the negative evaluative language are extremely important in this situation, in non-violent communication. In this situation again, let us say, for instance, in a family, say my one sister is doing all the household work, and the brother is, laying down in the sofa, not doing anything in the home. So it is likely that the sister might say, "Hey, you lazy fellow, you're not able to do anything." So that might start a lot of fight and tiff off and all those things. But probably, in fact, I can tell you, probably if she uses what she means to say, she uses in a different language. She might say that, "Well, I know you're working late in the night yesterday for your office in the home, and probably you are very, very tired. I'm sure the next time I put up my home, you will be able to contribute to that." So that helps in a much better way in a relationship. I will give you an interesting example. One of my close friend who is much senior to me, of course, is Mr. Shantam Seth. He is a Buddhist scholar, internationally known Buddhist scholar, Dharmacharya Shantam Seth. Almost more than a year back, I was at his home. I will tell you exactly what is the importance of nonviolent communication and how it helps you in strengthening relationship. Well, he had a courier to be sent. It was around 5 o'clock in the evening, and he called up his driver. Generally, we will say, "Hey, you come and take the courier." First thing he told asked his driver, "Well, are you busy now?" So probably the driver must have said no. So then he said, "Please come." And then when he came, he said, "अगर अभी मैं आपको ये courier देता हूँ, आपको कष्ट तो नहीं होगा, आप जो जाएंगे." Just imagine he's telling to his driver. Most of the time we are using what? Yes, this is the courier, and you take the money and go and give it to the courier company. But he said, "अगर अभी आप जाएंगे तो आपको कष्ट तो नहीं होगा." So immediately you see how when you use tools of non-violent communication, in most of the time, I will say that it is not like 100% things every time it might happen, but in most of the time you make the other person probably defenseless. So the driver said, probably he had no other choice. He said, "Fine, no, I am not, I will, मेरे को कोई कष्ट नहीं होगा, आप मेरे को दीजिए और मैं जा रहा हूँ." So immediately he went. So this is the way. You see how, as I told you, non-violent communication helps us to reframe from the way that we have been using our talking in a particular way. So that is an extremely important point we need to look at, how we reframe from the usual way that we, talk. Then we come to the next important element of nonviolent communication, and that is empathy. Empathy is extremely important, putting ourselves into the shoes of the others and trying to understand his or her position. And in fact, studies show that the more empathetic we are, then it helps us, these are various psychological studies, it helps us to evolve ourselves, it helps us to reduce our stress, and it helps us into our well-being. So empathy is extremely important. And when we connect empathetically with each other, means listening to the feelings of others and trying to understand their behavior. So empathy, empathetic listening, empathetic connection is extremely important element of nonviolent communication. And I feel that it's an extremely important way on how we develop our skills of empathy to develop and strengthen relationships with others. Then comes another important element which looks, of nonviolent communication, which again is extremely important in today's time, is the feelings of compassion. Compassion trying to understand the problems of the other, trying to feel the problems of the other. If we are compassionate, then we are able to, you know, reach out to the other person. We will be able to see the pain of the other person. Compassion is extremely important, and how we, practice compassion is something very important. In fact, when we look at the Gandhian approach to nonviolent communication, I would like to go back again. It is not just nonviolent communication with other human beings. It is actually, we are looking at the Gandhian cosmocentric approach to human nature. That means that we understand the importance of human interdependence. So non-violent communication, not just for with other human beings, but also with nature and also with other living beings. Extremely important in today's context. Probably, if you remember that beautiful statement made by the famous British primatologist, Dr. Jane Goodall, who, in the context of this pandemic, says that the more we are destroying our forests, the wild beings are coming closer to the human habitats, and there is a greater transmission of viruses from the wild animals to human beings. The buffer zones are getting destroyed. So how we communicate with the nature, how we communicate to other living beings is as crucial as our communication with other human beings. So this is again an extremely important aspect to be looked at, the importance of human interdependence, which is the important bedrock of nonviolent communication. Then the next important element of nonviolent communication is the expression of gratitude. Extremely important. The more we express gratitude, the better it is. And again, there are several psychological studies which show that how important, when we are expressing gratitude, we are able to be more happier. It is contributes to our well-being. Proper psychological study shows that. So empathy, compassion, gratitude, extremely important. And if we are able to nurture this, as I can tell you, that there are no fixed formulas to practice nonviolent communication. It has to come from within, it has to come from the heart, and it has to come over a period of time. So these are the important elements of nonviolent communication, and probably we will see that each one of them are extremely important, especially in today's situation of the pandemic, and how we relate. Each one of them are interconnected, and how we are able to bring them together for a non-violent communication ecosystem is a challenge for all of us, and we need to practice it in our daily lives. That's extremely important. Also, before that, I forgot to tell you about the foundation of nonviolent communication. You see, all the buildings, any building that are there, there should be a proper foundation. So the foundation of nonviolent communication, when we are training, we say that these are the 5 important pillars of nonviolence, Gandhian nonviolence. So which are the 5 important pillars of Gandhian nonviolence? Again, many people tell us that it's extremely difficult to practice, Gandhian principles in today's world. But when we try to discuss with them, it becomes clearer that it's very simple, and if we are able to follow, much easier to handle. So the first important pillar of Gandhian nonviolence is mutual respect. If I respect you, it is possible that you will also respect me. So mutual respect is extremely important. You see, most of the conflicts happens, most of the differences happen because there is lack of respect. If I'm not respecting you, and if there are differences that has come, then the problem might get accentuated. But if I have a respect for you, then it becomes much easier to handle that differences of opinion or a conflict that are there. So that is extremely important. So first and foremost is mutual respect. Next comes, from respect. When I respect you, then it is much easier to understand you. So respect leads to greater understanding. So the second pillar of Gandhian nonviolence is understanding. So if I'm respecting you, then it is likely that we are able to understand each other. The third important pillar of Gandhian nonviolence is acceptance. So respect leads to greater understanding, and greater understanding, when I'm able to understand you in a better way, then it is much easier for me to accept your position, accept your point of views. Because if I'm not respecting you, if I'm not understanding you, then it is much more difficult and much more challenging for me to accept your position. So respect leads to understanding, understanding leads to greater acceptance. Then the fourth important pillar of Gandhian nonviolence is positive appreciation. You see, in today's world especially, we are all into various kind of negativities, negative emotions, right from the morning when we get up. This has not happened, this is there, so many in the media, you will find so much of negativities. In our lives there might be so much of negativity. The more we look at the negative factors in our life, then more we get into that whole trap, the trap of being in real problematic situation, stressful and tense. So what is important is to look at the positive things around us, positive things in our life, so that we are able to have a positive energy within around us. So positivity is extremely important. So positive appreciation. Let us try to understand what are positive things in our life, what is happening. So positive appreciation is the next important pillar of Gandhian nonviolence. And next comes the next important aspect of Gandhian nonviolence is compassion. We have already seen how compassion is important in the important aspect of nonviolent communication. When Gandhi was talking about compassion, he was not talking of compassion just with other human beings. As I said, he always looked at the cosmocentric approach to human nature, that is the human interconnectedness. So these are the five pillars of Gandhian nonviolence, and the whole idea of nonviolent communication forms the basis of that are these five pillars of Gandhian nonviolence. So, friends, this is in nutshell what is under understanding of nonviolent communication and how we can approach it in our daily lives. It's so important that when we are practicing nonviolent communication in our daily life, it becomes much more easier to handle difficult relationship issues. It becomes much more easier to handle our stress situations. It becomes much more easier to see the positive things around us. So in a nutshell, we need to really work to within ourselves, and also make it into a practice and to use these different strategies of nonviolent communication, so that we are able to develop better relationships or strengthen our relationships and handle conflicts in a much more constructive way rather than destructive way. Because friends, you see, when we say, for instance, we have a fight with someone, and if we are very violent and with that other person, so there is a chance of the breakdown of communication. And when there is a breakdown of communication, we are not able to, we are not open to the person with whom we are having a difference of opinion. There is likely that the relationship might get strained. But if we are flexible, if we are open, and those important pillars of respect, understanding, and acceptance, we imbibe them, then probably you will realize that it's much easier to handle that particular conflict. So, in a nutshell, these are the points which I thought it could be we could flag off. And next, I think probably we could have some more insightful question answers, so that we can have better understanding. I will learn from you, and I can also share some more points possibly with you. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Dr. Kundu, for this wonderful ideas about how we can actually communicate in a actual way. So I have already been posted the website of gandhismriti.gov.in. So people who would be really interested, they can just click on the website, and there are so many courses available. So we have two interesting questions. One from Seema. Seema would like to ask that I believe in non-violence, but many a times being soft hurts and gives opportunities to the opposite person to rule over us and say things which hurts. How do we tackle such situations?
Well, I think, as even Gandhi had said, non-violence is not for someone who is weak. It is for the brave. Actually, when we are non-violent, it doesn't mean that we are soft. we are putting, we are there in our principle. We are, we are standing in our principle, but yet we are not aggressively doing that. I can tell you the example in a very powerful example of Mahatma Gandhi himself, like when he was in Champaran, and you remember he had gone to do the inquiry of the indigo, the agrarian farmers, the distress over there, and the whole way in which these planters, these farmers were badly suppressed. So when the court magistrate told that you can't, he got an order that he was not allowed to go and do the inquiry with the indigo farmers. Then he appeared in the court. Well, you see the language that he uses, his statement in the court. He says, and that exactly probably answers your point that it is not soft. He says that, well, I totally agree and I totally go by what the law says, and I can understand your difficulty, he was telling the magistrate. But I have come with a particular purpose, and my purpose is very strong, and I intend to go and move and ensure that I do that particular work of doing the inquiry. So then, in fact, he was very strategic while he was, standing on his own point, his own principles. On the other hand, he was very conciliatory. He used a conciliatory point, saying that he understood the problems of the administration and their difficulties, and he could see that. In fact, he says that I am a very dutiful citizen. That's what the word, something that he used. So while we are adhering to our own principles if we are thinking that our principle is correct, yet we are not using the language which might break that communication process. So it is not soft, it is actually very strategic and very constructive. Many times I myself have, I will tell you the example when we are saying that. Some about 10-12 days back, sometime in December, I think in January, we organized some competitions through MyGov. And we were supposed to give the prize money to the winners and also the certificate. So unfortunately, because of the lockdown, everything, nothing could happen. So that other person who had won one of the competition, he was very aggressive over the phone, and he started saying ki, what is this, and is this professionalism, this and that and that. So I told him, I was very polite, and I started explaining him the situation. I said, please put yourself in our position and see that what you could have done, that whether you'd be able to give the prize money or the certificate when the office was closed down and all. So we had a conversation. See, I could have been very aggressive and try to be very, try to shut him up. But I did not, and I tried to engage him in the dialogue. And towards the end of the conversation, he said that sir, I really would request you if you could kindly expedite the situation. I said, yes, and in fact, we have now sent the certificates also. So this is the way how we, tackle a particular situation, and you transform the other person who might be very aggressive to actually continue the talk with you, the conversation you have. Of course, I will not say this is 100% all the time you will get the success, but in most of the time you are likely to get a success when you use these kind of strategies.
Wonderful.
Yes,
And
please.
I have one question actually. It's regarding my own concern that sometimes we may not able to manage our own anger to some extent, and that's one of the biggest challenge for us, that we may not able to manage our own anger and our own agitation to some extent. So how this non-violent action and non-violent practice could help us to mitigate ourselves, not to other, to dialogue with others, but to dialogue with our own self, that you rightly pointed out in stating that self dialogue. And I'm really willing to know that how we can practice the self dialogue techniques to agitation.
Well, yes. Definitely, we are all human beings, and at several points, we will be very angry. We will feel that we are in trouble, and that actually leads to the cause of the anger. How we channelize our anger is something which needs to be understood, which needs to be realized. Because say for instance, I'm very angry or I'm very tense, to I'm very angry and I start yelling at people and doing things, so that actually I should realize that it is not going to take me anywhere. In the same but if I am able to channelize my anger and try to see the situation, if I am able to manage my anger constructively, then it becomes much easier to handle a particular situation. I will tell you some actual study that we have done, and using the Gandhian approach to anger management. You see, the Gandhian approach is that he says in several of his writings that you have an anger journal, like towards the end of the day when you are retiring to bed, you try to jot down, you try to self introspect and self reflect on the real reasons why you got angry with, say, a particular person, and try to try to see that possibly how, in an alternative way, how you would have handled the particular situation. So using this notion, we had some years back did this study with a group of about 30-40 students of Delhi Public School, Guwahati. And then we asked them about their situation of anger, these students of class 11, at the start of the study, how they handle a particular situation, how much angry they became, and how much angry they were with their friends or family members, etc., etc. Then after a month, we asked them to, put together an anger journal and try to self-reflect, self-introspect, self-dialogue, these areas, and also channelize their anger very constructively. After a month, when I went over there and tried to talk to them, they felt that they were able to handle their situation of anger in a much more matured way, in a much more constructive way than they were doing before. So that shows that if we are able to use these different kind of strategies or tools of anger management, possibly we might be able to handle such situations in a better way. Because it is impossible for a human being not to get angry. We will get angry, but how we channelize our anger and use it constructively and handle it constructively is our ingenuity that we need to learn over a period of time. And we must realize that there is no point in becoming very, very angry and hitting and
Yes.
yelling and all. It is
I think
not going
a
to take us.
similar question have been asked. Similar question have been asked by Firdaus Malik. Keeping
Okay.
present aggression of state in mind, is it possible non-violence against the state, and what are the ways? Firdaus, would you please clear what do you mean by state? State means your state or state of mind.
Hello.
Hello,
Yes,
please.
am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, my question is actually the state, the governing body of the present state, central government, which is running this
Mm-hmm.
country. So I mean keeping the present aggression of the state, because they are acting
Mm-hmm.
very badly against the voices, whether they are journalists, whether these are some lawyers who are talking about the state. So they are practicing the aggression, and they are keeping them beside the jails. So my question is, keeping all these conditions in mind, is it possible that
Mm-hmm.
we can practice this non-violence? And what are the ways to keep the state aggression in mind? What are the ways to tackle it safely? Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Malik. Point A, I would not like to, talk or reflect anything related to a political question here, because, as to be very frank, as someone who is working in the government, I'm not supposed to answer political questions straight away like that. And I hope that you appreciate my.
I really request Dr. Kundu to answer
Yes.
in a very philosophical way, because both the government, the
Yes.
previous government and the current government, they have totally different philosophical aspect. So I
So
think it
my
depends upon the philosophical way. So if you answer like
yeah.
this.
That's right. My humble request is that I will not like to reflect on any particular government or anything because you see, this is my limitations. But on the other hand, I will also say that we work a lot with different institutions. Say, for instance, we are doing a lot of program with the Government College of Education, Srinagar, and we did one program in which that was basically on for the teachers, and that was on how from retributive practices to restorative practices, on the whole idea of classroom management, conflict management in classrooms. In fact, I think on the 9th or 10th we are planning to do an international webinar with them. So, and plus also we have done several major programs in Kashmir. We have also done in the Ladakh, Kargil, everywhere. So we as a Gandhian institution, as an institution which is formed on, you can say, the blood of the father of the nation, the place where Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. So we have been doing a lot of programs on promoting the Gandhian non-violence and ideas amongst a lot of young people of the region, and there have been a very large number of the youth of that whole place region who have been volunteering with us. In fact, at this stage we have almost 4 interns doing internship with us on promoting Gandhian practices in education. So there are so many things that one can do. I have conducted training of the Jammu and Kashmir Police on non-violent communication and non-violent conflict resolution. So that was an amazing experience. 2 days, more than 140 police officers were there. It was an amazing experience. So there are a lot of ways in which a lot of young people we are trying to motivate to work with us to promote the practice of the Gandhian philosophy and Gandhian ideals. Yes, please.
The next question from Dr. Dinakar Kalambe. Regarding the current scenario of COVID-19, he would like to ask that the attack on the doctors, on the nurses, the medical staffs, and how would you like to, what's your opinion that we should practice the non-violent activism in this time of pandemic when we actually support a lot to our safeguards? We are actually not practicing any kind of non-violent activities. Rather, we are more violent on them. So what's your opinion?
Yes. In fact, I remember a very, very interesting academic paper written by a doctor, in fact, for one of the journals, especially on this count, which Dr. Dinakar Kalambe has asked on the relationship between the doctors and the patients in the context of the pandemic. And she has written from the doctor's point of view. And she feels that while there are large number of patients, we have to understand their issues, especially in the pandemic, the family member may be in trouble and they are not able to handle that stress, and that's why they become aggressive. There are also situations of doctors overworked, like this doctor. She says that she gives duty for almost 48 hours at a stretch, and then she's totally exposed to the COVID-19 patients almost every day, and so many of them. So also she's afraid of fearful of own health and own life. So in such a situations, how we remain calm is a big challenge, definitely. So both from the point of view of the patients and from the point of view of the doctors. And there she feels that some of the elements of non-violent, she has actually written the paper focusing on practicing non-violent communication in times of the pandemic, doctor's perspective. So there she's talking on how important it is for doctors to learn the art and science of practicing compassionate listening, empathy. She gives an example of her own treating a particular cancer patient during this time, and how that particular patient reacted and how she reacted. So this is how basically we need to create awareness. Of course, at the end of the day, we must see that we are, whether it's a doctor or the the patient's family or the patient. We are all human beings, and how we handle, how we reach out to each other as human beings, that is something very, very important. In spite of these whole problems of the stress of that COVID-19 gives. So possibly, I think some of these elements of non-violent communication, empathy, compassion, compassionate listening, these are important elements. If each one of us practice, we will be able to, come out of a situation where we will be able to have a better relationship between the doctors and the patients or the families of the patients. Of course, nothing can be 100% sure, but at least we should try to do that.
That's right. I think,
Yes.
initial stage when actually we didn't have much information about COVID-19 and how it's been spreaded out. The agitation and the lack of information is one of the biggest cause of this kind of agitation. But when we actually came to know about it, how it would be spread out, how we can able to manage it, and it's not been spreading out like this. So we should, keeping us ourselves, maintaining the physical distance, so many things have been cleared. Then I think the agitation is more in a, I think now it's not been that much. I think it's my opinion.
Mhm.
So
Yes,
now
yes,
the
yes.
next question is from Dr. Chandra Upadhyay from Nepal. He would like to ask that how do you relate non-violence with this disagreement or a disobedience of any injustice?
How do you relate non-violence with
Balance with
disagreement?
disagreement or disobedience of any injustice.
Can Dr. Upadhyay give more
Yes,
clearer, because
Dr. Upadhyay, would you like to explain a little bit more your question?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Swati, and special thanks to Dr. Kundu. I'm really happy. Just I wanted to know how should I understand the concept of non-violence, Gandhian non-violence, in terms of disagreement or disobedience. Because so far I read Gandhi, I found he disagreed because he had a lot of
yes.
disobedience, say for civil disobedience. These days too, we find in the society that people are disobeying things, and somewhere it's written that disobeying injustice is also the right of every citizen. If my government does something wrong, I should disobey because that's my civic right, a civic duty. So you relate principle of non-violence with disagreement or disobedience of any social injustice. Uh, uh, I
Fine.
also like to thank you that you gave a very good idea of self-nurturing. I liked it very much. One should self-nurture than expecting something from others. Thank you.
That, thank you, Dr. Upadhyay. Also, for your information, just a few last week, one of the student whom I had mentored, now she's a doctor in Kathmandu. She successfully treated a 96-year-old lady who was COVID positive, and I was so happy and excited about it. Like I have mentored her ever since her school days. This particular student now who is a doctor. That is just for sharing, as you're from Nepal. Relating to your question, especially when you look at, say, for instance, I was telling you about that whole statement of Mahatma Gandhi to the magistrate in Champaran. Here he's saying that, well, I am a citizen who is totally who feels that I am a dutiful citizen, and I understand your position that you are taking. He was telling the magistrate. Yet my cause is a greater cause, in the sense I have come here to do the inquiry. So it is how you frame. Like, we might have disagreement, we might have something which is totally contrary to what the other person is saying, but the way we reframe that particular thing, that makes all the difference. Because if we are very aggressive and try to hit the other person's in the bullseye, try say that we want this and that, without trying to, it is all how we are using communication strategically and constructively. That is something very, very important, especially in situations when there is disagreement or something which we want to be having a different opinion what the other person or other actor is telling about. So the result was, if you go back to that history, was that the magistrate not only took out that case against him, but also the government administration offered Gandhiji full support, and they said that you can go ahead with your inquiry, and also if you need any kind of a help, that will be there if you read in his autobiography. Most importantly, as Gandhi was Gandhi, he did not just end there. He was using the double-edged weapon. You see, all the agriculturists over there in Champaran, they were one of the biggest problem was that they were always very, very afraid and fearful of the administration. So he was trying to, what he said, he tried to further strengthen the relationship with the administration. He said that, fine, you have given me the order to go and do the inquiry, but I would like that wherever I go, you're most welcome to send your CID officer with me, so that he actually records whatever I'm doing and try to see whether I'm doing something legal or not legal, or I'm trying to incite passion amongst the people or not. That person is most welcome to go with me. With that, what he was trying to do was that when the CID officer was going with him to all the villages, so he was sitting with Gandhi, and the farmers were also seeing that how that officer was sitting and listening to them in the meeting. So the fear factor, that means, was disappeared. So he actually was doing two things using the strategies of non-violent communication. On the one hand, he's further strengthened the relationship or tried to reach out to the administration, and the second was he was trying to see that the fear factor was completely finished. So this is how we use communication is critical, and the way we use communication is very critical. So possibly that is there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kundu, for this wonderful explanation. Yes, thank you so much. And for me personally, I have one question. Uh, it's not last but not the least. I have so many questions regarding the non-violent activities right now, how it's been going on. Because I think non-violent activities for me, it's a kind of your breathe practice. You can't accept non-violent activism within fortnight. It's a lifelong journey. So I think with the very early days of our child, if we would like to put this kind of practice from the very early age, I think that would be wonderful for the child and for the society as well. So I just really want to know that how we can input non-violent activities with so many practical applications, with the games, and with so many small, very small little things, how we can integrate this kind of non-violent activities among our generation and next generation also.
In fact, as if you remember, mentioned those 5 pillars of Gandhian non-violence. In fact, many times when we have workshops with the students, we talk about these 5 important pillars, and they're very simple to follow. Like even in our families or in the schools, let us try to see how we can promote mutual respect amongst each other. How mutual respect helps us to have a greater understanding of each other, and how greater understanding helps us to greater acceptance of each other's position. So these are, like, if you see, these are very simple things: respect, understanding, acceptance, appreciation, compassion, or you say empathy. So it's so important that we have different creative ways in which we try to inculcate these values amongst our younger generation, so that over a period of time you will have a citizenry which is not only very respectful of each other, but also are able to handle differences in a more matured way. Because many times what happens that if there is a difference of opinion, we are fighting out. We think that we will win by being very, very as aggressive as possible. But definitely that is not the case. It is how we handle it is extremely important. I will give you an example. Like as I told you, I've been conducting this training in non-violent communication for the judicial officers and the lawyers and prosecutors also. So I had a chance to have a training program with the honorable judicial officers and the lawyers of the Saket District Court here in New Delhi. So after a month, I went back and had a feedback session with these stakeholders, and the president of the Bar Association, he said that we lawyers are very attuned to go to the court and try to be aggressive so that we can push our case and we try to win the case and all. And he said, after your session, I realized that the same thing that which I'm trying to put together very aggressively in the court, if I am using non-violent communication and try to reframe from the way I have been used to do it, I have realized in the last 1 month, I am able to handle the cases in a much better way and a more effective way. And I am able to convince the judicial officers, the judges, in a much easy, in a much better way than I was doing beforehand. So it gives us a lot of room for us to how we reach out to the other people when we are using these kind of strategies. That's right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kundu. We are also at the end of our discussion. So it's like wonderful and enlightened talk with you. And because it's a very long and very mature to understand the nonviolent activities and its different layers. So we definitely have another round of discussions with you, with some other topic related with non-violent activities and how the Indian societies and the students, they are accepting non-violent activities with so many challenges. So here with the welcome note and with the ending note, I would really thank you for your wonderful presentation for web platform for dialogue, because dialogue, I think one of a major tool to discuss about non-violent activities. So that's why I thought it would be wonderful to have you with us, because you are one of the, I know personally you because I think since 2014 or 15, I don't know from when I know you, but this is the first time when we actually came to know each other and sharing our thoughts of non-violent activities.
Sure.
So thank you
very much.
Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, all of you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.